Okay, ever get that feeling like, you're living in one of those true crime documentaries?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It seems like lately, every time I turn around, there's some case ripped from the headlines, and it's just wild. And let me tell you, today's deep dive, uh, no exception.
No, not at all.
We've got twists, we got turns, and I think we're going to leave you speechless.
Definitely. I think what really gets me about the cases that we're going to talk about today is, they're not just these isolated incidents. They really touch on those universal fears. Like, think about it, the fear of losing a child,
Oh, absolutely.
the desire for justice, and also that just unsettling feeling that, maybe things aren't always what they seem.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Okay, so first up, let's head to Delphi, Indiana. After, years of waiting, the pretrial hearings for Richard Allen, the man accused of murdering Libby and Abby, are finally underway. This case has just haunted so many of us for years, and now we're finally getting a glimpse behind the curtain of the legal process.
It's interesting to me. Just the sheer volume of confessions that Allen has allegedly made, we're talking over 60.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. Like, how can that even be possible, right?
Right. And so the defense is claiming that these confessions are a result of stress-induced psychosis brought on by, well, they say, the harsh conditions of prison.
Oh, okay.
So they're saying that he was basically pushed to a breaking point and these confessions can't be trusted.
That's a scary thought. But the defense is also pointing to an entirely different theory, right?
Yes.
They're suggesting a ritualistic murder by an Odinist group.
Yeah. And they're pointing to the manner of death. Right. They're saying having their throats slit, that is consistent with a sacrificial ritual Odinism, which is this pagan Norse religion.
So branches were placed on the bodies in a specific pattern.
Yes. That was also something that they brought up.
But the prosecution, they're not buying it, are they?
No, not at all. They're saying there is zero evidence linking any Odinist group to the crime scene. And they're arguing that any, patterns or markings found near the bodies, those are just more likely evidence of a struggle, not some sort of ritual.
Okay, so it seems like we're in for a real, battle of narratives here. It'll be up to the jury to decide what to believe. And speaking of narratives that are difficult to process, let's shift gears to a case that reopens wounds from a national tragedy, the 9/11 attacks. After years of delays, 3 of the accused conspirators actually reached a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. But of course, that sparked massive outrage, and ultimately it was revoked.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful example of how raw those emotions still are. Even after all these years, the families of the victims felt really betrayed by the idea of a plea deal, even one that resulted in, life sentences.
Yeah. And, the Pentagon wasn't even consulted about the deal. It's like there was this disconnect between the legal proceedings and just the emotional weight of this entire tragedy.
For sure. And the decision to revoke the plea deal and move forward with a trial, while potentially offering a sense of closure for some, it also means those families are going to have to relive the trauma of that day as this case plays out. It's just a really difficult situation.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that, justice, while necessary, can also come at a very high cost. Okay, this next case, it hit close to home for, I think, a lot of parents, the treadmill murder case. I think it's impossible to forget little Corey. He was 6 years old, and he died under such just horrific circumstances.
Oh, that gym footage. Seeing his father, Christopher, forcing him to run on that treadmill, increasing the speed, even when he was clearly struggling and falling. It was really hard to watch. And, to make matters worse, Corey's mother, she had actually reported abuse before, even seeking custody, but was denied. It just makes you question how effective those systems designed to protect children really are. It's heartbreaking, just to think that this could have been prevented. And then, at his sentencing, Christopher, while expressing sorrow for Corey's loss, he still continued to maintain his innocence in the actual death.
Right.
It's almost like, guilt and grief and denial all tangled up.
Yeah, definitely. And Corey's mother's statement, just, wow, so powerful.
Yeah.
A poignant reminder of the lasting trauma of losing a child, especially when you feel like the system failed to protect them.
Okay, now buckle up because this next one is, it's straight out of a nightmare. Remember Sarah Boone, the woman who allegedly killed her boyfriend by zipping him into a suitcase during, get this, a game of hide and seek? Well, let's just say her legal journey has been a circus.
This case is fascinating because of how Boone's own behavior is shaping the trial. She has fired multiple lawyers, choosing to represent herself, going pro se, they call it, which means she's acting as her own attorney. And that is a risky move, I have to say. Yeah, I bet. And she's trying to find a lawyer through a handwritten flyer asking for someone who wants fame on national television. I don't even know where to begin with that one.
Right. It really makes you wonder about her competency to stand trial, right? And if there are maybe some underlying mental health issues that are playing a role here. And get this, just last week, she tried to backtrack, claiming the judge forced her into self-representation, and now she wants a lawyer again.
It's like, wanting to have your cake and eat it too. This situation highlights that tension, right, between an individual's right to represent themselves and the responsibility of the court to ensure a fair trial, which, a lot of times requires legal expertise.
Exactly. Okay, now let's talk about the Micah Miller case. This is a case that really ignited a conversation about domestic abuse.
This one was hard to hear about. Micah tragically died by suicide, but a lot of people believe that her estranged husband, J.P. Miller, played a role because of years of alleged abuse.
Right. And this case brought to light this often hidden issue of coercive control. It's a form of abuse that can be incredibly damaging, but really hard to prove legally. It's not always about that physical violence. It's about manipulating and controlling someone's life to the point where they feel completely trapped.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a form of abuse that, like you said, often flies under the radar but can be incredibly damaging. And while Micah's family was initially planning to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit, they recently reached a settlement with JP, dropping all litigation.
Which, while potentially offering some closure, it does leave some people wondering if JP was really held accountable.
Yeah, it does.
And it underscores how difficult it can be to get justice when it comes to this type of abuse. Our current legal framework doesn't always do a good job of addressing these more subtle forms of harm, especially within, intimate relationships.
Absolutely. But Micah's family's push for Micah's law, that's a glimmer of hope.
Definitely.
This law aims to make coercive control a felony.
It's a testament to their strength. They're trying to turn their personal tragedy into something positive, something that might prevent future tragedies. And that's a powerful form of justice.
Absolutely. It's about holding abusers accountable and creating a system that truly supports and protects victims. These cases remind us that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about building a safer, more just, and equitable society.
Right on. Yeah, it is. It's inspiring to see them taking action. And, all of these cases, even though they're so different, they all kind of point to the same thing. They expose the flaws in the systems that are meant to protect us,
Yeah, that's a good point. Like whether it's Child Protective Services failing in Corey's case, or those complex legal battles around 9/11, or even the difficulty of proving coercive control, like in Micah's story, it's clear we've got work to do.
Definitely. And they force us to confront those uncomfortable truths, right, about how our justice system works or sometimes doesn't. Like, we have to look at the limitations, the potential for bias, and even ask ourselves, can it really deliver justice for everyone?
Yeah, even with the conviction in Corey's case, it still doesn't feel like justice was served. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His mother fought so hard to protect him, and yet the system, it just failed her.
And then you have the Sarah Boone case, and that brings up these questions about, how we handle cases where mental health is a factor. How do you ensure a fair trial while also recognizing that someone's mental state can really impact their actions and their ability to even participate in their own defense?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And then the Micah Miller case, it shines a light on coercive control and how hard it is to recognize and even harder to prove in court.
Absolutely. And the fact that her family reached a settlement, I mean, it makes sense. They want closure, but it leaves some wondering if JP was really held accountable for what he allegedly did. And it raises the question, are our current laws actually equipped to address these more subtle forms of abuse, even though, they can be so damaging?
It is a sobering thought. But Micah's family, pushing for Micah's law, that's pretty inspiring. It's a reminder that we can push for change even when we're facing tragedy. Their work, it could actually help create a future where coercive control is recognized, for the crime that it is.
For sure. It's about holding abusers accountable and creating a system that really does support and protect victims. These cases, they remind us that justice isn't always just about punishment. It's about building a better world, a safer world, a more equitable society.
Okay, let's turn our attention to a case that's still unfolding. And this one is particularly gruesome.
Yeah, you're talking about the human remains they found in a burning shopping cart under a bridge in Yonkers, New York. It's, it's shocking and mysterious.
It really is. It's like something out of, A horror movie. Who would do something like that? And whoever did this, they removed the victim's hands, feet, and even teeth. Like they wanted to make it impossible to identify them.
It does seem that way, yeah. And then, of course, they found more human remains and a gun in a Bronx apartment. So that adds another layer to this already bizarre case.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where the investigation goes, what connections they find between the victim, the apartment, and whoever is responsible for this awful act.
For sure.
It's a reminder that even in a city like New York, terrible things can happen.
Yeah.
And it also shows, just how important law enforcement is when it comes to piecing together crimes, especially ones like this.
It really does. It shows their dedication and expertise, working to bring those responsible to justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of bringing people to justice, there are some upcoming cases that I think we should have on our radar. There's one involving Wade Wilson. He's been dubbed the tattooed face psychopath serial killer out of Florida.
Oh, right. Yeah. And there's been a lot of debate around whether he's actually innocent, especially with those jail calls between him and his girlfriend that were just released. And then there's also the question about his lawyer and if he was properly represented during his trial.
So this one sounds like it's far from over. And you mentioned that there's another deep dive coming up about a case that's been in the news a lot lately. Can you give us a little preview? What's that about?
Well, I can't say too much, but let's just say it's a case that has sparked a lot of outrage and some really strong opinions. It involves allegations of abuse, questions about, who's accountable, and the potential for some lasting consequences, both legally and for society.
Oh, okay. Sounds intriguing. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Me too. And, it's important to remember these deep dives, they're not just about, the shocking details. It's about looking at the complexities of justice, understanding those human stories, and, starting some real conversations about the issues that these cases bring up.
Absolutely. It's about learning, reflecting, and maybe even, challenging our own points of view. It's recognizing that these aren't just stories, right? These are real events that has really impacted people's lives, families, communities.
Yeah.
And they really make you think, even when a verdict is reached or a settlement, those questions, those ethical and moral questions, they stick with you.
They do. And they make us really think about, what does justice actually mean?
Yeah.
What is it? And the complexities of, human behavior and the role that we all play in creating a safer and more just world.
These cases, they stay with you.
Yeah.
They make you think and want to learn more. And that's what we try to do here on the deep dive, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're going deep, peeling back those layers and hopefully, getting some good conversations going.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, exploring these cases, I want to hear from you. What really stood out to you? What questions are you still thinking about?
Because sometimes the most important things we learn, they don't come from a courtroom or an investigation, right? It's those discoveries we make, within ourselves, the ones that make us think differently, act differently, be better.
And if this, deep dive has done that for you, if it's left you with some questions or you just want to learn more, well, then we've done our job.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.